The Final Quest, a vision by Joyner, from Morningstar Publications. The Power of Pride. I was pondering how I was learning as much descending the mountain as I had by climbing it, when the noise of the battlefield drew my attention. By now, there were thousands of mighty warriors who had crossed the plain to attack the remnant of the enemy horde. The enemy was fleeing in all directions, except for the one division, Pride. Completely undetected, it had marched right up to the rear of the advancing warriors and was about to release a hail of arrows. I then noticed that the mighty warriors had no armor on their backsides. They were totally exposed and vulnerable to what was about to hit them. Wisdom remarked, "You have taught that there was no armor on the backside, which meant that you were vulnerable if you ran from the enemy. However, you never saw how advancing in pride also made you vulnerable." I could only nod in acknowledgement, for it was too late to do anything. It was almost unbearable to watch, but wisdom said that I must. I knew that the kingdom of God was about to suffer a major defeat. Though I had felt sorrow before, I had never felt this kind of sorrow. To my amazement, when the arrows of pride struck the warriors, they did not even notice. However, the enemy kept shooting. The warriors were bleeding and getting weaker fast, but they would not acknowledge it. Soon they were too weak to hold up their shields and swords. They cast them down, declaring that they no longer needed them. Then they started taking off their armor, saying it was not needed anymore either. Another enemy division appeared and moved up swiftly. It was called Strong Delusion. Its members released a hail of arrows, and they all seemed to hit their mark. It only took a few of the demons of delusion, who were all small and seemingly weak, to lead away this once great army of glorious warriors. They were all taken to various prison camps, each named after a different doctrine of demons. I was astounded at how this great company of the righteous had been so easily defeated, and they still did not even know what had hit them. I blurted out, how could those who were so strong, who had been all the way to the top of the mountain, who have seen the Lord as they have, be so vulnerable? Pride is the hardest enemy to see, and it always sneaks up behind you, Wisdom lamented. In some ways, those who have been to the greatest heights are in the greatest danger of falling. You must always remember that in this life you can fall at any time from any level. Take heed when you think you stand, lest you fall, I replied. How awesome such scriptures seem to me now. When you think you are least vulnerable to falling is in fact when you are most vulnerable. Most men fall immediately after a great victory, Wisdom lamented. How can we keep from being attacked like this? I asked. Stay close to me, inquire of the Lord before making major decisions, and keep that mantle on. Then the enemy will not be able to easily blindside you as he did them. I looked at my mantle. It looked so plain and insignificant. I felt it made me look more like a homeless person than a warrior. Wisdom responded as if I had been speaking out loud. The Lord is closer to the homeless than to kings. You only have true strength to the degree that you walk in the grace of God. And He gives His grace to the humble. No evil weapon can penetrate this mantle, because nothing can overpower His grace. As long as you wear this mantle, you are safe from this kind of attack. I then started to look up to see how many warriors were still on the mountain. I was shocked to see how few there were. I noticed, however, that they all had on the same mantle of humility. How did that happen? I inquired. When they saw the battle, just as you witnessed, they all came to me for help, and I gave them their mantles, Wisdom replied. But I thought you were with me the whole time. I am with all those who go forth to do the will of my Father, Wisdom answered. You're the Lord, I cried. Yes, he answered. I told you I would never leave you or forsake you. I am with all my warriors, just as I am with you. I will be to you whatever you need to accomplish my will, and you have needed wisdom. He then vanished. Rank in the kingdom. I was left standing in the midst of a great company of angels who were ministering to the wounded on the level of salvation. As I began to walk past these angels, they bowed one knee and showed me great respect. I finally asked one of them why they did this, as even the smallest was much more powerful than I was. Because of the mantle, he replied. That is the highest rank in the kingdom. This is just a plain mantle, I protested. No, the angel protested. You are clothed in the grace of God. There is no greater power than that. But there are thousands of us wearing the same mantle. How could it represent rank? I asked. You are the dreaded champions, the sons and daughters of the king. He wore the same mantle when he walked on this earth. As long as you are clothed in that, there is no power in heaven or on earth that can stand before you. Everyone in heaven and hell recognizes that mantle. We are indeed his servants, but he abides in you, and you are clothed in his grace. Somehow, I knew that if I had not been wearing the mantle, and my glorious armor had been exposed, the angel's statements and behavior towards me would have fed my pride. It was simply impossible to feel prideful or arrogant while wearing such a drab, plain cloak. However, my confidence in the mantle was growing fast. Part 3. The Return of the Eagles. On the horizon, I saw a great white cloud approaching. Hope rose in me just from seeing it. Soon it had filled the whole atmosphere with hope, just as the rising sun chases away the darkness of night. As it grew closer, I recognized the great white eagles that had flown from the tree of life. They began landing on the mountain, taking their places on every level beside the companies of warriors. I carefully approached the eagle who had landed near me, because his presence was so awesome. When he looked at me with his penetrating eyes, I knew I could hide nothing from him. His eyes were so fierce and resolute that I trembled. Chills ran through me just from looking at them. Before I could speak, he answered me. You want to know who we are? We are the hidden prophets who have been kept for this hour. We are the eyes of all those who have been given divinely powerful weapons. We have been shown all that the Lord is doing, and all the enemy is planning against you. We have scoured the earth, and together we know all that needs to be known for the battle. Did you not see the battle that just took place? I asked, with as much irritation as I dared express. Could you not have helped those warriors who were just taken captive? Yes, the eagle responded. We saw it all, and we could have helped if they had wanted our help. We could have helped them by holding them back, telling them to sit and be still. But we can only fight in the battle that the Father commands, and we can only help those who believe in us. Only those who receive us as who we are, the prophets, can receive a prophet's reward or the benefits of our services. Those who were ambushed did not yet have the mantle that you are wearing, and those who do not have the mantle cannot understand who we are. We all need one another, including those here who are still wounded, and many others whom you do not yet know. The eagle's heart. As I talked with the eagle, I started to think like him. After this short discussion, I could see into the eagle's heart, and I began to know him like he knew me. The eagle recognized this. "You have some of our gifts," the eagle noted. "Though they are not very well developed, you have not used them very much. I am here to awaken these gifts in you, and in many others like you, and I will teach you how to use them. In this way, our communication will be sure. And unless we have sure communication, we will all suffer many unnecessary losses, not to mention missing great opportunities for victory." "Where did you just come from?" I asked. "We eat snakes," the eagle replied. "The enemy is bread for us. Our sustenance comes from doing the Father's will, which is to destroy the works of the devil. Every snake that we eat helps to increase our vision. Every stronghold of the enemy that we tear down strengthens us so we can soar higher and stay in the air longer. We have just come from a feast, devouring the serpents of shame that have bound many of your brothers and sisters. They will be here soon. They are coming with the eagles we left behind to help them find the way and to protect them from the enemy's counterattacks." These eagles were very sure of themselves, but not cocky. They knew who they were and what they were called to do. They knew us and they knew the future. Their confidence was reassuring to me, but even more so to the wounded who were still lying all around us. Those who had been recently too weak to talk were actually sitting up and listening to my conversation with the eagle. They looked at him the same way lost children would look to their parents who had just found them. The wind of the Spirit. When the eagle looked upon the wounded, his countenance changed as well. In place of a fierce resoluteness he had previously exhibited, he was like a soft, compassionate old grandfather when gazing upon the wounded. The eagle opened up his wings and began to gently flap them, stirring up a cool wind, refreshing breeze that flowed over the wounded. It was unlike any other breeze I had ever felt before. With each breath, I was gaining strength and clarity of mind. Soon the wounded were standing and worshiping God with a sincerity that brought tears to my eyes. Again, I felt a profound shame at having scorned these who stayed on this level. They had seemed so weak and foolish to us who were ascending the mountain. But they endured much more than we had, and they remained faithful. God had kept them, and they loved Him with a great love. I looked up at the mountain. The eagles were all gently flapping their wings. Everyone on the mountain was being refreshed by the breeze they were stirring up, and we all began to worship the Lord. At first, there was some discord between the worshiping coming from the different levels, but soon everyone on every level was singing in perfect harmony. Never on earth have I ever heard anything so beautiful. I never wanted it to end. Soon I recognized it as the same worship that we had known in the garden, but now it sounded even richer and fuller. I knew that it was because we were worshiping in the very presence of our enemies, in the midst of such darkness and evil surrounding the mountain, that it seemed so much more beautiful. I do not know how long the worship lasted, but eventually the eagles stopped flapping their wings, and it stopped. "Well, why did you stop?" I asked the eagle I had been talking with. "Because now they are whole," he replied, indicating the wounded who were now all standing and appeared to be in perfect condition. "True worship can heal any wound," he added. "Please do it again," I begged. "We will do this many times, but it is not for us to decide when. The breeze that you felt was the Holy Spirit. He directs us. We do not direct Him. He has healed the wounded and has begun to bring about the unity that is required for the battles ahead. True worship also pours the precious oil upon the head, Jesus. The oil then flows down over the entire body, making us one with Him, and with each other. No one who comes into union with him will remain wounded or unclean. His blood is pure life, and it flows through us when we are joined to him. And when we are joined to him, we are also joined to the rest of the body, so that the blood flows through us all. Isn't that how you heal a wound to your body? By closing the wound so blood can flow to the wounded members and bring regeneration? When a part of his body is wounded, we must join in unity with that part until it is fully restored. We are all one. In the euphoria still felt from the worship, this brief teaching seemed almost esoteric. Yet I knew it was very basic. When the Holy Spirit moved, every word seemed glorious, regardless of how elementary it was. I was so filled with love that I wanted to hug everyone, including the fierce old eagle. Then, like a jolt, I remembered the mighty warriors who had just been captured. The eagle sensed this, but he did not say anything. He just watched me intently. Finally, I spoke up. "Can we recover those who are just lost?" "Yes, it is right for you to feel what you do," the eagle finally said. "We are not complete, and our worship is not complete until the whole body is restored. Even in the most glorious worship, in the very presence of the King, we will feel this emptiness until all are one, because our King also feels it. We all grieve for our brothers in bondage, but we grieve even more for the heart of the King. Though you love each of your children, you would be particularly concerned for one who is sick or wounded. The King loves all his children too, but the wounded and oppressed have most of his attention now. For his sake, we must not quit until all have been recovered. As long as any are wounded, he is wounded." Faith to move the mountain. Sitting down by the eagle, I pondered his words. Finally, I remarked, "I know that wisdom now speaks to me through you, because I hear his voice when you speak. I was so sure of myself before the last battle. I was almost carried away with the same presumption that they were carried away with. I could very easily have been captured with them if wisdom had not stopped me. I was motivated more out of hatred for the enemy than by the desire to set my brothers free. Since coming to this mountain and fighting in this great battle, I now think that most of the right things I did for the wrong reasons. And many of the wrong things I did, I had good motives for. The more I learn, the more unsure of myself that I feel." "You must have been with wisdom a long time," the eagle responded. "He was with me a long time before I had begun to recognize him. But I'm afraid that most of that time I was resisting him. Somehow, I now know that I'm still lacking something very important. Something I must have before I go into the next battle. But I just don't know what it is." The great eagle's eyes became even more penetrating as he responded. "You also know the voice of wisdom when he speaks to you in your heart. You are learning well, because you have the mantle. What you are feeling now is true faith." "Faith?" I shot back. "I'm talking about serious doubts." "You are wise to doubt yourself. True faith depends on God, not on you, and not even on your faith. You are close to the kind of faith that can move this mountain, and move it we must. It is time to carry it to places where it has not traveled before. However, you are right that you are still lacking something very important. You must yet have a revelation. Even though you have climbed to the top of the mountain and have received from every truth along the way, and have stood in the garden of God and tasted his unconditional love, and has seen his Son many times now, you still understand only a part of the whole counsel of God, and that only superficially. I knew that this was true, and it was actually comforting to hear it. I have judged so many people and so many situations wrongly, I exclaimed. Wisdom has saved my life many times now, but the voice of wisdom is still a very small voice within me, and the clamor of my own thoughts and feelings are still far too loud. I hear wisdom speaking through you much louder than I hear him through my own heart. So I know I must stay close to you. We are here because you need us, the eagle replied. We are also here because we need you. You have been given gifts I do not have, and I have been given gifts you do not have. You have experienced things I have not experienced, and I have experienced things you have not. The eagles have been given to you until the end, and you have been given to us. I will be very close to you for a time, and then you must receive other eagles in my place. Every eagle is different. It is together, not individually, that we have been given to know the secrets of the Lord. The eagle then rose up from the rock on which he had perched and soared over to the edge of the level on which we stood. Come, he said. As I approached him, I saw steps that led down to the very base of the mountain, and a small door. Why have I not seen this before? I asked. When you first came to the mountain, you did not stay on this level long enough to look around, he answered. How did you know that? Were you here when I first came to the mountain? I would have known if I had not been here, because all who miss this door do so for the same reason, he responded. But, in fact, I was here. I was one of the soldiers you so quickly passed on your way up the mountain. It was then that I recognized the eagle as a man I had met and had a few conversations with soon after my conversion. He continued, I wanted badly to follow you then. I had been on this level for so long, and I needed a change. But I just could not leave all the lost souls that I was still trying to lead here. When I finally committed myself to doing the Lord's will, whether it was to stay or go, wisdom appeared to me and showed me this door. He said it was a shortcut to the top. That is how I got to the top before you did. There I was changed into an eagle. I then remembered that I had seen doors like this on a couple of levels. I had even peeked into one of them and was amazed at what I saw. I did not venture very far into it because I was so focused on the battle and on trying to get to the top of the mountain. Could I have entered one of these doors and gone right to the top? I asked. It is not quite that easy, the eagle remarked, seeming a little irritated. In every door there are passageways, one which leads to the top. Anticipating my next question, he continued, the other ones lead to other levels on the mountain. The Father designed each passageway so that everyone would choose the one his level of maturity dictated. Incredible! How did he do that? I thought to myself. But the eagle heard my thoughts. It is very simple, continued the eagle, as if I had spoken my thoughts out loud. Spiritual maturity is always determined by our willingness to sacrifice our own desires for the interests of the kingdom and for the sake of others. The door that requires the most sacrifice to enter will always lead us to the highest level. I was trying to remember all that the eagle was saying to me. I knew I must enter the door before me, and that it would be wise to learn all I could from someone who had preceded me and had obviously chosen the correct door to the top. I did not go directly to the top, and I haven't met anyone who has, the eagle continued. But I went there much faster than most, because I had learned so much about self-sacrifice while fighting here on the level of salvation. I have shown you this door because you wear the mantle, and would have found it anyway. Time is short, and I am here to help you mature quickly. There are doors on every level, and every one leads to treasures that are beyond your comprehension," he continued. "They cannot be acquired physically, but every treasure that you hold in your hand, you will be able to carry in your heart. Your heart is meant to be the treasure house of God. By the time you reach the top again, your heart will contain treasures more valuable than any of the treasures on earth. They will never be taken from you, but they are yours for eternity. Go quickly, the storm clouds are now gathering, and another great battle is looming." "Will you go with me?" I pleaded. "No," he responded. "This is where I belong now. I must help those who were wounded. But I will see you here again. You will meet many of my brother and sister eagles before your return, and they will be able to help you better than I at the place where you meet them." The treasures of heaven. I already loved the eagle so much that I could hardly stand leaving him. I was glad to know that I would see him again. Now the door was drawing me like a magnet. I opened it and entered. The glory that I beheld was so stunning that I immediately fell to my knees. The gold, silver, and precious stones were far more beautiful than can be described. They actually rivaled the glory of the tree of life. The room was so large that it seemed to be without end. The floor was silver, the pillars were gold, and the ceiling was a single pure diamond that reflected every color I had ever known, and many I had not known. Angels without number were all around, dressed in various robes and uniforms that were of no earthly origin. As I began to walk through the room, the angels all bowed in salute. One stepped forward and welcomed me by name. He exclaimed that I could go anywhere in the room and see anything I wanted. Nothing was withheld from those who come through the door. I was so overwhelmed by the beauty that I could not even speak. I finally remarked that this was even more beautiful than the garden had been. Surprised, the angel responded, "This is the garden. This is one of the rooms in your Father's house, and we are your servants." As I walked, a great company of angels followed me. I turned and asked the leader why they were following. "Because of the mantle," he said. "We have been given to you to serve you here and in the battle to come." I did not know what to do with the angels, so I just continued walking. I was attracted to a large blue stone that appeared to have the sun and the clouds inside of it. When I touched it, the same feelings flooded over me as when I had eaten the fruit of the tree of life. I felt energy, unearthly mental clarity, and love for everyone and everything. I started to behold the glory of the Lord. The longer I touched the stone, the more the glory increased. I never wanted to take my hand off the stone, but the glory became so intense that I finally had to draw away. Then my eyes fell on a beautiful green stone. "What does that one have in it?" I asked the angel standing nearby. "All these stones are the treasure of salvation. You are now touching the heavenly realm, and that one is the restoration of life," he continued. As I touched the green stone, I began to see the earth in rich and spectacular colors. They grew in richness the longer I had my hand on the stone, and my love for all that I saw also grew. I began to see a harmony among all living things, on a level I had never seen before. Then I began to see the glory of the Lord in His creation. It began to grow until again I had to step away because of the intensity. Losing track of time, it occurred to me that I had no idea how long I had been there. I did know that my comprehension of God and His universe had grown substantially as I merely touched these two stones, and there were many, many more to touch. There was more in that one room than a person could have absorbed in a whole lifetime. How many more rooms are there? I asked the angel. There are rooms like this on every level of the mountain you climbed. How can one ever experience all that is in just one of these rooms, much less all of them? I asked. You have forever to do this. The treasures contained in the most basic truths of the Lord Jesus are enough to last for more lifetimes than you can measure. No man can know all there is to know about any of them in just one lifetime. But you must take what you need and keep proceeding toward your destiny. I started thinking about the impending battle again and the warriors who had been captured. It was not a pleasant thought in such a glorious place, but I knew I would have forever to come back to this room. I had only a short time to find my way back to the top of the mountain, and then back to the battlefront again. I turned back to the angels and said, "You must help me find the door that leads to the top." The angel looked perplexed. "We are your servants," he responded, "but you must lead us. The whole mountain is a mystery to us. We all desire to look into this great mystery, but after we leave this room, we will be learning even more than you." "Do you know where all the doors are?" I asked. "Yes, but we do not know where they lead. There are some that look very inviting, some that are plain, and some that are actually repulsive. One is even terrible." "In this glorious place, there are doors that are repulsive?" I asked in disbelief. "And one that is terrible? How can that be?" "We do not know, but I can show it to you," he responded. "Please do," I said. We walked for quite a while, passing treasures of unspeakable glory, all of which were difficult to bypass. There were also many doors, with different biblical truths over each one. When the angel had called them inviting, I felt that he had quite understated their appeal. I badly wanted to go through each one, but my curiosity about the terrible door kept me moving. Then I saw it. Terrible had also been an understatement. Fear gripped me, and I thought it would take my breath away. Gethsemane. I turned away from the door and quickly retreated. There was a beautiful red stone nearby, which I almost lunged at with my hands. Immediately, I was in the Garden of Gethsemane, beholding the Lord in prayer. The agony I felt was even more terrible than the door I had just seen. Shocked, I jerked my hand back from the stone and fell to the floor in exhaustion. I wanted so badly to return to the blue and green stones, but I had to regain my energy and my sense of direction. The angels were quickly all around me, serving me. I was given a drink that began to revive me. Soon I was feeling well enough to stand and began walking back to the other stones. However, the reoccurring vision of the Lord praying finally compelled me to stop. "What was that back there?" I asked. "When you touch the stones, we are able to see a little of what you see and feel a little of what you feel," said the angel. "We know that all these stones are great treasures, and the revelations they contain are priceless. We beheld for a moment the agony the Lord had before his crucifixion, and we briefly felt what he felt that terrible night. It is hard for us to understand how our God could ever suffer like that. It makes us appreciate more, much more, what an honor it is to serve the men for whom he paid such a terrible price." The angel's words were like lightning bolts straight to my soul. I had fought in the great battle. I had climbed to the top of the mountain. I had become so familiar with the spiritual realm that I hardly even noticed angels anymore, and I could speak on nearly equal terms with great eagles. Yet I could not bear to share even a moment of the suffering the Lord had without wanting to flee to a more pleasurable experience. I should not be here, I almost shouted. I, more than anyone, deserve to be a prisoner of the evil one. Sir, the angel said apprehensively, we understand that no one is here because he deserves it. You are here because you were chosen before the foundation of the world for a purpose. We do not know what your specific purpose is, but we know that it is very great for anyone who is on this mountain. Thank you, I replied. You are helpful. My emotions are being greatly stretched by this place, and they tend to overcome my understanding. You are right. No one is here because he is worthy. Truly, the higher we climb on this mountain, the more unworthy we are to be here, and the more grace we need to stay. How did I ever make it to the top in the first place? Grace, the angel responded. If you want to help me, I said, please keep repeating that word to me whenever you see me in confusion or despair. I am coming to understand that word better than any other. Now I must go back to the redstone, I continued. I know now that it is the greatest treasure in this room, and I must not leave until I am carrying that treasure in my heart. The truth of grace. The time I spent at the redstone was the most painful ordeal I have ever experienced. Many times I simply could not take it anymore, but had to withdraw my hand. Several times I went back to the blue or green stones to rejuvenate my soul before I returned. It was harder to return to the redstone each time, but my love for the Lord was growing more through this than anything I had learned or experienced. Finally, I saw the presence of the Father depart from Jesus on the cross. I could stand it no longer. I quit. I could tell that the angels who were also experiencing what I was to a degree were in full agreement with me. The willpower to touch the stone was simply no longer in me. I did not even feel like going back to the blue stone. I just lay prostrate on the floor, weeping over what the Lord had gone through. I also wept because I knew I had deserted him just like his disciples. I failed him when he needed me the most, just as they did. After what seemed like several days, I opened my eyes. Another eagle was standing beside me. In front of him were 3 stones, one blue, one green, and one red. Eat them, the eagle said. When I did, my whole being was renewed, and great joy and great soberness both flooded my soul. When I stood up, I caught sight of the same 3 stones set into the handle of my sword, and on each of my shoulders. These are now yours forever, the eagle said. They cannot be taken from you, and you cannot lose them. But I did not finish the last one, I protested. Christ alone will ever finish that test, he replied. You have done well enough, and you must go on now. Where to? I asked. You must decide, but with the time getting shorter, I will suggest to you that you get to the top soon. The eagle then departed, obviously in a hurry. I then remembered the doors. I started towards those doors that had been so appealing. But when I reached the first one, it simply did not appeal to me anymore. Then I went to another, and it felt the same. Something seems to have changed, I remarked out loud. You have changed, the angels replied at once. I turned to look at them and was amazed at how much they had changed. They no longer had a naive look about them. They were now more regal and wise-looking. I knew they reflected what had just taken place in me, but I now felt uncomfortable just thinking about myself. "I ask for your counsel," I said to the leader. "Listen to your heart," he said. "That is where these great truths now abide." I had never been able to listen to my own heart, I responded. "It is subject to so many conflicts. I am too subject to delusions, deceptions, selfish ambitions. It is hard for me to even hear the Lord speaking to me above its clamor." "Sir, with the red stone now in your heart, I do not believe that this will continue to be the case," the leader offered with uncharacteristic confidence. Judgment's door. I leaned against the wall, thinking that the eagle was not here when I needed him the most. He had gone this way before and would know which door to choose. But I knew he would not come back, and I knew it was right that I chose. As I pondered my opinions, the terrible door was the only one I could think of. Out of curiosity, I decided to go back and look at it. I had departed from it so fast the first time that I had not even noticed which truth it represented. As I approached it, I could feel the fear welling up inside of me, but not nearly as intensely as the first time. Unlike the other doors, it was very dark around this one, and I had to get very close to read the truth written over it. Mildly surprised, I read, "The Judgment Seat of Christ." "Why is this truth so fearful?" I asked aloud, knowing that the angels would not answer me. As I continued looking at it, I knew that it was one that I should go through. "There are many reasons it is fearful," the familiar voice of the eagle responded. "I'm very glad you're back," I replied. "Have I made a poor choice?" "No. You have chosen well," the eagle assured me. "This door will take you to the top of the mountain faster than any other. It is fearful because the greatest fear in creation has its source through that door. The greatest wisdom that men can know in this life or in the life to come is also found through that door. Even so, very few will go through it." "But why is this door so dark?" I asked. The light of these doors reflect the attention that the church is presently giving to the truths behind them. The truth behind that door is one of the most neglected of these times, yet it is one of the most important. You will understand when you enter. The greatest authority that men can receive will be entrusted only to those who go through this door. When you see Christ Jesus sitting on his throne, you will be prepared to sit with him on it too. Then this door would not be so dark and foreboding if we had just given more attention to this truth, I asked. That is correct. If men knew the glory that is revealed behind that door, it would be one of the most brilliant, the eagle lamented. However, it is still a difficult door to pass through. I was told to return and encourage you because you will soon need it. You will see a greater glory, but also a great terror than you had ever known. Because you have chosen the difficult way now, it will be much easier for you later. Because you are willing to face this hard truth now, you will not suffer loss later. Many love to know his kindness, but very few are willing to know his severity. If you do not embrace both, you will always be in danger of deception and of a fall from his great grace. I know I would have never come here if I had not spent time that I did at the Red Stone. How could I keep trying to take the easy way when it is so contrary to the nature of the Lord? I asked. But now you have chosen, so go quickly, the eagle told me. Another great battle is about to begin, and you are needed at the front, he said. As I looked at the eagle and saw the great resoluteness in his eyes, my confidence grew. Finally, I turned towards the door. Part 4. The White Throne. I gazed one last time around the huge room inside the mountain. The gems and treasure that represented the truths of salvation were breathtaking in their glory. It seemed that there was no end to their expanse, and no way to fully comprehend their beauty. I could not imagine that rooms which contained the other great truths of the faith could be any more glorious. This helped me to understand why so many Christians never wanted to leave this level, being content to just marvel at the basic doctrines of the faith. I knew that I could stay here for eternity and never get bored. Then the eagle who was standing next to me exhorted, "You must go on." As I turned to look at him, he lowered his voice and continued, "There is no greater peace and safety than to abide in the Lord's salvation. You were brought here to know this, because you will need this faith for where you are now going. But you must not stay here any longer." The eagle's statement about peace and safety caused me to think about the courageous warriors who had fought in the battle from the first level of the mountain, salvation. Although they fought very well and delivered so many, they had also been badly wounded. It did not seem that they had found peace and safety here. The eagle interrupted my thoughts again, as if he were listening to them. "God has a different definition of peace and safety than we do," he said. "To be wounded in the fight is a great honor. It is by the Lord's stripes that we are healed. And it is through our stripes that we, too, are given authority to heal. Once we are healed, we are given the power to heal others in the very place where the enemy wounded us." Healing was a basic part of the Lord's ministry, and it is also a basic part of ours. One reason why the Lord allows bad things to happen to His people is so they can receive compassion for others, by which the power of healing operates. That is why the Apostle Paul told of his beatings and stonings when his authority was questioned. Every wound and other bad thing that happens to us can be turned into the authority to do good. Every beating that the great apostle took resulted in salvation for others. Every wound that a warrior receives will result in others being saved, healed, or restored. The eagle's words were very encouraging. Standing here among the glory of the treasure of salvation made this truth even clearer and more penetrating. I wanted to go shout it from the top of the mountain so that all who were still fighting would be encouraged. Then the eagle continued, "There is another reason why the Lord allows us to be wounded. There is no courage unless there is real danger. The Lord said He would go with Joshua to fight for the promised land, but over and over He exhorted him to be strong and courageous. This was because he was going to have to fight, and there would be very real danger. It is in this way that the Lord proves those who are worthy of the promises." The glorious eagle. I looked at the old eagle, and for the first time I noticed the scars among his torn and broken feathers. However, the scars were not ugly. They were lined with gold that was somehow not metal, but rather flesh and feathers. I could see that this gold was giving off the glory that emanated from the eagle and made his presence so awesome. "Why did I not see this before?" I inquired. Until you have beheld and appreciated the depths and the treasures of salvation, you cannot see the glory that comes from suffering for the sake of the gospel. Once you have seen it, you are ready for the test that will release the highest level of spiritual authority in your life. These scars are the glory that we will carry forever. This is why even the wounds of our Lord suffered are still with Him in heaven. you can still see his wounds, and the wounds of all of his chosen ones have taken for his sake. These are the medal of honor in heaven. All those who carry them love God and his truth more than their own lives. These are the ones who followed the Lamb wherever he went, willing to suffer for the sake of truth, righteousness, and the salvation of men. True leaders of his people, who carry genuine spiritual authority, must have first proven their devotion in this way. I looked at the leader of the company of angels that followed me. I had never witnessed deep emotion in an angel before, but these words were unquestionably moving him greatly, as well as the rest of the angels. I really thought they were about to cry. Then the leader spoke. We have witnessed many wonders since the creation, but the voluntary suffering of men for the Lord and for their fellow men is the greatest wonder of all. We too must fight and even suffer at times, but we dwell here, where there is such glory and such light, that it is very easy to do this. When we see men and women choose to suffer for hope they can only dimly see in their hearts, it causes even the greatest angels to bow their knee and gladly serve the heirs of salvation. We marvel at the dedication of you who dwell with so little encouragement in a place of such darkness and evil. At first, we did not understand why the Father decreed that man would have to walk by faith, suffering great opposition, while not having the benefit of beholding the reality of the glories of the heavenly realm. But now we understand that through these sufferings he proves their worthiness to receive the greatest authority that they will be given as members of his own household. This walk of faith is now the greatest wonder in heaven. Those who pass this test are worthy to sit with the Lamb on his throne, for he has made them worthy, and they have proven their love. Courage. Then the eagle interjected. Courage is a demonstration of faith. The Lord never promised that his ways would be easy, but he has assured us that it would be worth it. The courage of those who fought from the level of salvation moved the angels of heaven to esteem what God has brought about in fallen man. The faithful warriors took their wounds in the terrible onslaught, while only beholding darkness and the seemingly defeat of the truth, just as our Lord did on the cross. Nevertheless, they did not quit, and they did not retreat. I was again starting to regret that I had not remained on the level of salvation and fought with those brave souls. Again, understanding my thoughts, the eagle interrupted them. By climbing this mountain, you were demonstrating faith and wisdom too. Your faith freed many souls, so they would come to the mountain for salvation. You received some wounds, as the warriors on the level of salvation did, but your authority in the kingdom has come more from acts of faith than from suffering. Because you have been faithful in a few things, you will now be given the great honor of going back to suffer, that you may be made a ruler over many more. But remember that we are all working together for the same purposes, regardless of whether we are building or suffering. If you go higher, many more souls will fill these rooms, to the great joy of heaven. You have now been called to climb and to build, but if you are faithful in this, you will later be given the honor of suffering. I then turned and looked at the dark and foreboding door, over which was written, "The Judgment Seat of Christ." Just as warmth and peace had flooded my soul each time I looked at the great treasures of salvation, fear and insecurity gripped me when I looked at this door. Now it seemed that everything in me wanted to stay in this room, and nothing in me wanted to go through that door. Again, the eagle answered my thoughts. Before you enter the door to any great truth, you will have these same feelings. You even felt them when you entered into this room filled with the treasures of salvation. These fears are the result of the fall. They are the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The knowledge from that tree made us all insecure and self-centered. The knowledge of good and evil makes the true knowledge of God seem fearsome, when in fact every truth from God leads to an even greater peace and security. Even the judgments of God are to be desired, because all His ways are perfect. By now, I had experienced enough to know that what seems right is usually the least fruitful path, and is often the road to failure. Throughout my journey, the path of the greatest risk was the path that led to the greatest reward. Even so, each time it seemed that more was at stake. Therefore, making the choice to go higher became even more difficult each time. I started to sympathize with those who would stop at some point on their sojourn and refuse to go on, even though I knew more than ever that this was a mistake. The only true security came from continually moving forward into the realms that required more faith, which meant more dependence on the Lord. Yes, it takes more faith to walk in the higher realms of the Spirit, the eagle added. The Lord gave us the road map to His kingdom when He said, "If you seek to save your life, you will lose it. But if you lose your life for my sake, you will find it." These words alone can keep you on the path to the top of the mountain and lead you to victory in the great battle ahead. They will also help you stand before the judgment seat of Christ. Through the door. I knew it was time for me to go. I resolved to always remember the glory of this chamber that contained the treasures of salvation. But I also knew that I had to move beyond them. I had to go on. I turned, and with all the courage that I could muster, I opened the door to the judgment seat of Christ and stepped through into terrifying darkness. The company of angels that had been assigned to me took positions around the door, but did not enter. "What's the matter? Aren't you going to come with me?" I demanded. "Where you are going, you must go alone. We will be waiting for you on the other side." Without responding, I turned and started walking before I could change my mind. Somehow I knew that I should not put my security in the company of angels. As I walked into the darkness, I could hear the eagle's parting words. "After this, you will not have your trust in anyone else, even yourself, but only in the Lord." I was immediately in the most frightening darkness I had ever experienced. Each step became a terrible battle with fear. Soon I began to think that I had stepped into hell itself. Finally, I decided to retreat, but when I turned to go back, I could not see anything. The door was closed, and I could not even see where it was located. It was beginning to look as if everything I had gone through, everything that happened to me, and everything the eagles and the angels had told me had been a ruse to entrap me into this hell. I had been deceived. I cried to the Lord to forgive me and to help me. Immediately, I began to see Him on the cross. Just as when I had laid my hand on the red stone in the chamber I had just left. Again I beheld the darkness of His soul as He stood alone, bearing the sin of the world. Although in the chamber this had been a terrible darkness to behold, now it was a light. I resolved that I must go on, fixing my mind on Him. As I did, peace began to grow in my heart with each step, and it became easier than it had been just a few minutes earlier. Soon I was not even aware of the chilly darkness, and I started to see a dim light. Gradually, it became glorious light. Then it became so wonderful, I felt that I was entering into heaven itself. The glory kept increasing as I walked along, and I wondered how anything this magnificent could have an entrance so dark and foreboding.